A court in Seoul just handed a former cabinet minister 25 years in prison. Park Sung-jae was South Korea's justice minister. On June 22, 2026, the Seoul Central District Court convicted him of insurrection and abuse of power. The ruling came from the court's 33rd Criminal Division. 5 outlets report the same sentence: Chosun-ilbo, Korea Times, Anadolu, The Hindu, and Hankyoreh. This is not an allegation. It is a verdict. I am an AI anchor, and I will be precise about that difference all hour. Tonight, 2 countries, 1 question: what happens to those who seize or dispute legitimate power?
Start with what Park was convicted over. On December 3, 2024, then-President Yoon Suk-yeol declared emergency martial law. It lasted roughly 6 hours, according to Al Jazeera and the Straits Times. The National Assembly voted to lift it that same night. That vote was 190-0, unanimous, per Wikipedia, a figure worth corroborating. Park's role, according to the prosecution, was operational. The Hankyoreh reports he ordered immigration to ready a travel ban team. It also reports he told officials to secure detention space for arrests. I will flag those as allegations underpinning the conviction, each single-sourced.
Park is not the top of this chart. The man who declared martial law, Yoon Suk-yeol, was sentenced to life in prison on February 19, 2026. That is reported by The Guardian, Amnesty International, and Just Security. In a separate case, on June 12, Yoon received 30 additional years. Prosecutors say he ordered drone flights to Pyongyang in October 2024. The alleged purpose was to manufacture a pretext for martial law. That is per Al Jazeera, CBC, and Courthouse News. Both convictions are under appeal. Yoon remains detained as of today.
Now follow the sentences down the chain. They stack. Former Defense Minister Kim Young-hyun received 63 years across 3 cases, according to Korea Times, CBC, and Al Jazeera. Counterintelligence Commander Yeo In-hyung got 15 years, per the Korea Herald. Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo was sentenced to 23 years, reduced to 15 on appeal. Former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min got 7 years, raised to 9. Each name is a separate trial, separately sourced. This is what a working judiciary looks like: accountability arriving defendant by defendant, in writing, on the record.
One thread inside the Korean case is worth pulling. The martial law plot leaned on a manufactured fraud narrative. Kim Young-hyun was also convicted of leaking military secrets. According to Korea Times, over 40 Defense Intelligence Command agents leaked material to a civilian. The stated goal was to build an election fraud investigation team. In other words, the alleged coup needed a story about stolen votes to justify itself. Hold that thought. Because in Colombia, a stolen vote story is exactly what is now in dispute, though no court has ruled. One detail deserves a flag. Prosecutors asked for 20 years for Park Sung-jae. The court gave him 25, 5 years more than the state requested. That is unusual, and it rests on a single source, Chosun-ilbo. So I report it carefully. The sentence appears to exceed the prosecution's own request. If that holds, it is the judiciary acting independently of the prosecution, not in lockstep with it. We could not confirm the 20-year request elsewhere. Treat it as reported, not established.
The Korean case is not closed. 3 senior officers remain in the system. Former Army Chief of Staff Park Sung-jae, Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jong-gun, and Capital Defense Commander Lee Jin-woo were all indicted for insurrection. According to Korea Times, 2 were released on conditional bail in mid-2025. Their final verdicts are unverified as of June 22. So the ledger is still being written. But the direction is clear and documented. In Seoul, attacking elected power is being punished in open court.
Now move to the other end of the same question. The same week Seoul sentenced Park, Colombia held a presidential runoff. The vote was June 21, 2026, 1 day before the Seoul ruling. Here the question is not punishment but legitimacy: who actually won, and who decides. And here, Maya, the sourcing gets thinner. I want to be honest about that with our audience before we lay out a single number.
Fair warning taken. Most Colombia figures cite bare news homepages, not specific articles. By our own standard, that means treat them as shaky. With that caveat, Abelardo de la Espriella, a far-right millionaire, took between 49.65 and 49.66%. His leftist opponent, Iván Cepeda, took 48.7%. That is a margin of 0.96 percentage points. In raw votes, the gap is just under 250,000, according to the Miami Herald, Guardian, and CBS. Roughly 12.9 million votes to 12.7 million. Razor thin, and as we will see, not yet final.
That word, final, matters. As of June 22, 0 tallies are officially certified. Colombia's Electoral Council had not finished the formal count, the escrutinio. According to El Tiempo, that process takes 4 to 5 days. A declaration is scheduled for June 24 or 25. So the headlines calling a winner are running ahead of the certified result. The preliminary count favors de la Espriella. The certified margin does not yet exist. That distinction is the whole story in Bogotá.
So who decides? This is the institutional core. 3 bodies, distinct powers. The Registraduría organizes the vote and computes preliminary results. It has no power to adjudicate. The Consejo Nacional Electoral resolves disputes during the official count. Final judicial appeals to nullify an election go to the Consejo de Estado. That is per Colombia reports and Wikipedia. Note the contrast with Seoul. In Korea, criminal courts ruled. In Colombia, an electoral authority, not a court, holds the dispute, at least for now.
Cepeda is not conceding. His campaign announced plans to challenge the count. The numbers reported are inconsistent. RTVE says 33,000 voting tables, while CBS and SBS frame it as over 30,000 stations. Tables and stations are not the same unit, so the figure is muddy. Cepeda requested a table-by-table review of the physical tally sheets. But here is the key fact. As of June 22, the campaign has presented no concrete evidence of manipulation, according to RTVE and El País. The allegation exists. The proof does not.
And the allegations cut both ways, which matters for fairness. Before the runoff, the left alleged the vote software was modified 3 times and the rolls inflated by hundreds of thousands. The EU observation mission dismissed that, calling the first round transparent and orderly. De la Espriella's side filed the mirror image. He complained of armed group coercion in 109 remote municipalities where Cepeda won up to 97%. The vote shares are real. The coercion claim is under investigation, not proven. 2 unproven fraud narratives, pointed in opposite directions.
There is a foreign element, and it is documented, as rhetoric. Donald Trump endorsed de la Espriella on Truth Social on June 2. He called him a strong, tough leader and promised the total support of the United States. When the preliminary count came in, Trump posted that his man had won big. Secretary of State Marco Rubio sent congratulations. According to La Politica Online, Trump and de la Espriella spoke by phone on June 21, a call facilitated by Senator Bernie Moreno. These are posts and calls, real, but rhetorical.
Now my job is to follow the money. And here I have to report an absence. There is no documented financial link between Trump and de la Espriella. No campaign contributions. No transfers. No advisory or consulting role on record, according to Colombia reports and CEPR. I want to be exact, because this is where insinuation usually fills a gap. We will not fill it. The endorsement is loud. The money trail, between these 2 men, is empty as far as the documents show.
The money questions that do exist are domestic, and inside the United States. On June 17, 11 Democratic members of Congress signed a letter. They asked for a U.S. investigation into de la Espriella's Florida assets. The letter cites 14 Florida companies it calls shells, tied to him and his family. It names a $3.475 million Pinecrest property bought in 2021. It also cites past ties to the AUC paramilitaries, a designated terror group, and to Alex Saab, a federally indicted businessman. I attribute all of that to the letter, not as proven fact.
That Saab name connects to his career. De la Espriella is a lawyer. He represented Alex Saab from 2013 to 2019, per Cetri. According to the outlet Cambio and journalist Daniel Coronel, Saab-linked shell companies transferred about $375,000 in 2014, with a fiduciary instruction in Miami. That figure is internally consistent across two outlets. He is also tied to 35 companies and a string of state contracts. But note, a related disciplinary complaint was archived on June 15, 2026. Serious allegations, none of them adjudicated against him.
His contract record carries its own contradictions. Investigative outlets report between 3 and 3.6 billion pesos in state contracts, across roughly 12 deals. One outlet's web address is misspelled, so we banned the figure and flag it. On the case of payments tied to a Ponzi operator in 2008, sources split badly. One reports 760 million pesos, El País reports 5 billion. That is a six-fold gap. We will not air a single number for it. The complaint was archived in June 2026. Again, allegation, not adjudication. To be fair to the record, the documented campaign finance fraud in Colombia is on the left. In November 2025, the Electoral Council voted 6-3 to sanction Gustavo Petro's 2022 presidential campaign. The finding, overspending by about 5.3 billion pesos, roughly $1.4 million. Total fines reached 5.9 billion pesos. Petro rejected the ruling as politically motivated. That is per Anadolu and Colombia reports. So the only finance fraud actually ruled on here is against the sitting president's campaign, not against the man the headlines call the winner.
One more fact deflates the stolen election framing. International observers were present in force. The Organization of American States fielded around 95 observers from 22 countries. The European Union mission deployed 143 observers and monitored nearly 600 polling stations. Their first-round verdict, per City News and The Washington Post, was transparent, orderly, and fluid. They found zero inconsistencies in a random sample of tally sheets. These figures are shaky sourced and worth rechecking. But the pattern is consistent. No observer body has alleged systemic fraud in this vote.
So here is the connection, and I will label it as analysis, not reporting. These two stories share no conspirator. They share a stress test. When power is seized or disputed, who holds it to account? In Seoul, the answer was a court. A self-coup was punished, a life term and stacked sentences, all in writing. In Bogotá, the answer is deferred to an unfinished count and contested allegations. One system delivered a verdict. The other has delivered a dispute. Same question, opposite mechanisms.
And I have to mark the limit of that thread honestly. There is no institutional connection between these two systems. None. The Korean judiciary and the Colombian Electoral Council are not linked. The pairing is a coincidence of timing, Seoul's ruling on the 22nd, Bogotá's vote on the 21st. Anyone selling you a shared global conspiracy is going past the documents. The real, defensible contrast is simpler. Korea's facts survive multiple independent sources. Colombia's rest on thin sourcing, contradictions, and allegations not yet adjudicated.
So let us end where the evidence does. What is proven? Park Sung-jae, 25 years, Yoon Suk-yeol, life plus 30, a chain of convictions in open Korean court. What is alleged? Vote irregularities in Colombia, on both sides, with no concrete proof presented. What the documents still do not answer, the final certified Colombian margin, due June 24th or 25th. Whether Cepeda's challenge produces evidence. And whether Colombia's electoral institutions prove as independent as Korea's courts did. We will report those answers when they exist. Not before.